Mm-hmm.
Hi everyone, good morning from Italy. I hope you are all having a good time wherever you are in the world. And as always, thank you very much for being online today. My name is Daniele, but you already know me very well because I think you all participated to the first part of this training last week, right? When we started our adventure inside the installation process of K-array speakers. Today, we continue our training. And so, welcome everybody. As always, let's wait one more minute so that everybody can join and get comfortable, get a nice couple of coffee if it's morning, but most of you in this session are from the Asia Pacific area. So I think it's early afternoon or late evening, depending on where you are. And with me today, of course, there is Mark Vincent, the director of the Asia Pacific area for KRA. So Mark is always available together with me to answer your questions. Never forget that we have a chat where you can write all your comments, all your questions, and that's the most important part of the training, right? Is the opportunity for you to ask whatever you want to me, to Mark. In the chat, in the training today, there are also many of our colleagues from several countries in the Asia Pacific area, from Philippines, Indonesia, Japan, India. I mean, I can see a lot of you, I can recognize a lot of you, and we are always available to support our clients, our friends, our partners with any kind of questions and help you may need. I think we are good to go, but while we wait, just in case somebody is a little late, let me refresh a bit what we have done last week. You remember? We started discussing the accessories and the techniques that you can use to install K-array speakers in your venues. And then we spent quite a lot of time talking about impedances and how to set the proper impedance on a K-array speaker and which are the main characteristics of K-array amplifiers, right? And while we wait to start, I wanted just to republish this chart that I showed you last week, which is kind of a recap of our 4 amplifiers. We have discussed that K802 is a very unique kind of amplifier in this range, the most compact, but also the smartest, right? And today we will see all the features of this amp, how to connect with Wi-Fi, with Bluetooth, etc. And then we have our rack amplifiers for, the bigger installations with more powerful kind of speakers. And of course, we will go through all these amplifiers one by one. Today, we will learn how to interact with these amplifiers, how to control them, how to use the software to control them, and really how to adjust all settings to get the best sound and to get the best experience in the venue where a K-array system is installed. As you remember, just a little refresh, K802 is a 2 inputs, 4 outputs amplifier. Also, the KA14 is 2 inputs, 4 outputs. And then we have the, let's say, most advanced and most powerful amps, which are the KA24 and 84, which are 4 inputs to 4 outputs. We have analyzed a bit the signal path inside these amplifiers, but today we will do that much more in depth. So I'm not going to go through all the rows of this table now, because we are going to see all functions one by one from now to the next couple or 3 hours that we have together today. And I want to start from the rack amplifiers, KA14, 24, and 84. And then in the next hour, we will move to the K802 amplifier, okay? Just to give you an idea of the structure of today's session. At the end of today's training, I will drop in the chat a link to a quiz that you are invited to take. There are a lot of questions, actually, about the topics that we have discussed, like what kind of impedance you should set on a speaker and all this kind of stuff. And after you complete the quiz with a passing grade, after some days, we will send you the official K-Array certified installer certificate. So I really hope you will be willing to spend a bit of time taking care of that quiz. I will give you the link later today. And of course, I will give you also the link to download the slides that I'm showing you, so that you can always read again if you missed something before taking the quiz, right? So I will give you all the material you need. Let's go. So we have connected our KA14, 24, 84 amplifiers to the speakers. We have adjusted the impedance. We have prepared our cables. It's time to switch the amplifier on, and it's time to configure the amplifier. How can you do that? Well, most of the time you will connect a computer, because as I'll show you, if you connect a computer, you have access to all functions. But actually, especially if you want to start like with a quick kind of setup, you can do everything from the onboard touchscreen. So when you switch the amplifiers on, there is a touchscreen where you can access several functions that I'm going to explain to you. The most important is output configuration. So that's the page where you can specify which speakers are connected to which outputs, so that the amplifier can load the proper settings to drive that speakers. I will show you that, of course, in detail. Then you have volumes, input and output, routing, so input to output matrix. You can adjust the delay, and you can recall presets. So if you have saved some presets in the amp, you can recall them from the touchscreen. But pay attention, you cannot do any equalization from the touchscreen. It's too small. I mean, it will be pretty hard to insert an equalizer in the touchscreen. And you cannot save the configuration you have done. If you want to save permanently the configuration, the preset that you have created, you need to connect the computer. That's why, in the end, most of the time, you will always connect the computer to do a professional, complete configuration, but most of the functions are available also from the touchscreen. When you open a brand new amplifier, there is no sound going on. The outputs are muted for safety reasons. If you connect something in the input, you will get nothing in the output. Why? Because the amplifier will not allow you to play any kind of sound until you have completed the output configuration procedure. And that's because we want to be sure that when you start sending sound to the amp, this sound is limited and processed the right way to drive the model of speakers which are connected to the outputs. Okay, so the amplifier outputs are muted when you buy a new amp. The first thing you do is you complete the output configuration procedure, as I will show you very soon. I'll show you how to do it. From that moment on, you can start sending audio, and the speaker will start to play. And you'll be able to do more fine adjustments with the equalizer and delay and everything, but sound will be already there as soon as you complete the output configuration process. As I told you, most of the time you are going to connect a computer to the amplifiers for a more complete configuration. The communication between a computer or any other kind of control system, like a Creston, a Control 4, an Extron, any kind of control system you want to use, the communication with the amplifier is over RS485 protocol. As you probably know, RS485 is a serial communication protocol. So it's a standard serial communication protocol, and that's the way you can send data from a computer or a control system to the amplifiers. How many times I get the question, can we use a Creston or a Control 4 system to control K-array amplifiers? The answer is absolutely yes. We have some documentation that we can give you with the API to control the amplifier functions with the third-party control system. So all you have to do is to contact us, and we will give you access to the API documentation. We have also a Google Drive folder that I can share with you after you complete the certification, where you can find a lot of documentation in this Google Drive folder, including the API to control our amps. Okay, so if you don't want to use our own software on a computer, you are free to use also external control systems. Now, going back to our software, as you can see from the slide, there are two versions of our control softwares, K-Framework 2 and K-Framework 3. K-Framework 3 is the newest, is the new version. It's available for Windows and Mac, and it's, as I'll show you, it's really powerful. You can do complex groups and you can do advanced equalization, etc., etc. But K-Framework 2, at the moment, today, is compatible with KA24 and 84 only. If you have a KA14 instead, you have to install K-Framework 2. It's not a big issue. K-Framework 2, you'll find equalization and all the functions you need. It's just a different interface, and it's available only for Windows. Okay, so if you have a Mac, you'll have to install like a Parallel or other kind of window virtual machine, and you will be able to control a KA14. But KA24 and 84, let's go with K-Framework 3. I'll show you the software in a minute. So, it's time to connect your computer to the amplifiers. And somebody's already asking if there are any plans to add Ethernet to control these amps. Not at the moment, not in this version of the amps at least. Ethernet is available in the KA02, which is kind of a new generation of amplifier, the smallest, but I will get to that later. At the moment, today, if you want to connect a computer to one of these amps, like KA24, KA84, which is the example I'm showing you now, you have three options. Option number one, you use a USB cable. If you have several amps in the rack, you use the USB cable to connect your computer to the first amplifier in the rack, and then you can link all the other ones together using just XLR cables, because as you can see, we have an XLR RS485 output and input in each amplifier. So you enter with the USB cable in the first one, and then you exit with an XLR cable, and you get in the next one, and in the next one, and in the next one. Pay attention to something. If you join all these amplifiers together in the same RS485 network, and you want to control all of them at the same time, make sure to set a different ID number on each amplifier. What is an ID number? It's an identification number which makes that amplifier unique in the network. How can you set the ID number of an amplifier? Using the touchscreen. So the very first thing you do, you switch on the amps, you go in the info section of each amp, and you make sure to select a different ID number on every amplifier. So stay with the low numbers. This speed up the communication. So maybe you can put the first amplifier ID1, the second ID2, and then ID3, ID4, ID5, and so on. If you have two or more amplifiers with the same ID, you have a conflict, and the software is not going to be able to find those amplifiers. Sometimes it finds only one, sometimes it finds nothing. I mean, you have broken the network, the RS485 network. So make sure to set a different ID number on each amplifier. Now, USB cables have a problem. Usually they cannot be longer than a few meters. If you have a longer USB cable, the signal may drop and you may lose communication. There are some special kind of active powered USB cables that can be longer, but most of the time, if you use a standard USB cable, it should not be longer than a few meters. And that's pretty annoying because sometimes your computer is not very close to the rack where you have the amplifiers, right? So in this case, I would recommend to use another kind of connection, which is much better. And it's using XLR cables. So you connect your computer to the rack with XLR cable. Now, how do you put an XLR cable on your computer? That's impossible, right? You need an adapter, and this adapter is available on our catalog, is an accessory, and it's called the KUSB. Okay? The KUSB is a USB to serial converter. How does that work? Let me show you a little better how that accessory is made. As you can see, it's a little kind of looks like a pen drive, right? So you have a USB connector on one side that you plug in the computer. On the other side, you have an RJ45 connector where you can plug this little cable adapter from RJ45 to XLR, and you are done. So these cables, of course, are included in the accessory, right? So you plug the pen drive, this kind of pen drive, this accessory in the computer, and then you use one of these little cables to get an XLR connector on the other side, and then you use a XLR cable to connect all this to the first amplifier in the rack. Very easy. Very easy. This is just a standard serial to USB to serial converter. That's how they are called, okay? Of course, this is no Ethernet, even if there is an RJ45 connector on one side. That's just the shape of the connector, right? But it's RS485. As Mark, thank you Mark, wrote in the chat, the next generation of amplifiers will have Ethernet the same way as the K802 amplifier that I'm going to show you later. So now there is another option to connect a computer to an amplifier. And fun enough, we are using an Ethernet cable. Wait a minute, what's going on here? Well, we have a very special accessory, which is called the K-Dante. As you may guess, the main goal of this accessory is to make the amplifiers compatible with Dante. If you remember well, in fact, on our amps KA24 and KA84, you don't have a Dante input. You have an iZebu digital input, but iZebu and Dante is not the same thing. They are both digital communication protocols, but they are different. So if you want to include one of our amps in a Dante network, you need a Dante to iZebu converter. And that's exactly what the K-Dante is. As you can see, you have two Ethernet ports. Now they are really Ethernet ports, right? Because Dante goes on an Ethernet network. On the other side, you have the iZebu output. So you are converting two Dante channels into two iZibu channels. But there is another output from this accessory, and that is an RS485 output. What we are doing is something pretty complex, actually. If you connect your computer to the Kdante accessory, we are able to tunnel the RS485 serial communication inside the Ethernet cable together with the Dante signal that is going on in the same network. When these RS485 serial communication data arrive at the Kdante accessory output this data to the RS485 connector. So in the end, you may have your computer and also a mixer connected to a switch, for example, an Ethernet switch, and then from this Ethernet switch, you go to the Kdante accessory. Well, you can stream audio over Dante from the mixer, and at the same time, you can use the computer to control the amplifier over Ethernet. But pay attention, you are using an Ethernet cable, you are using a standard Ethernet switch and everything, but the data which are going through the cables, let's say, they are still serial RS485. So you still, if you have several amplifiers in the rack, you still have to set a different ID number on each amp. The communication is still serial, but you are using Ethernet cables thanks to this accessory. Of course, usually you don't, you buy this accessory if you are going to use the amps in a Dante network, right? Not just because you want to use an Ethernet cable instead of an XLR. Usually, the reason why you buy a Kdante is mainly because you are going to work with Dante. But you have the advantage that at that point, you can also do the communication with your computer using the same kind of Ethernet cable. A little bit of further information. I think I've told you more or less everything that is written here, except that if you're expert with Dante, sometimes people, when they see that there are two Ethernet ports on the Kdante accessory, they think there might be kind of a primary and secondary network possibility. No, that's not the case. The two Ethernet connectors are kind of in switch mode. So this is like a little switch, and it's used to daisy chain more of these accessories together. So it's you enter in one port, you exit for the other port. The two ports are in switch mode. It's like a little two-port switch, okay? And Jack, I see your question about the latency. It's very low, to be honest. I don't remember at the moment the value of the latency when the Dante is converted to iZibu. I think it's so low that I don't even know that. But I will check and get back to you in an email, because at the moment I don't remember the exact value, if any, if it's a kind of a sensitive value. So here is one option. You have a Kdante accessory on one amp, the first one in the rack maybe, and then you can join all the other amps together using XLR cables. So you exit from the RS485 output into the RS485 input of the next amp, and you do the same for the digital signal, right? The problem is that if you do so, you are kind of repeating the same audio signal on all the amplifiers. So the K-Dante is bringing only 2 channels iZeBu, and then you are kind of repeating these 2 channels on all the other amps. That's okay if you are streaming the same music on all the speakers connected to all the amps. If instead you have several zones, probably you need more K-Dante accessories, because each K-Dante brings 2 channels. So depending on how many discrete inputs you need, of course, you need more of these accessories. Of course, little parentheses, these accessories are used a lot in our concert systems, like KH2, KH3, KH5, where you have a cluster of a lot of speakers, a lot of boxes, and you use one of these K-Dante accessory in each cluster, and then all the other boxes, of course, play the same signal. So this accessory was designed in the beginning for the live series, the concert series, but of course it's compatible with the amplifiers as well. So if you are going Dante, that's the accessory you need. And this is KA24, KA84. Because KA14, as you remember, is missing a lot of features, let's say. First of all, there is no digital input in a KA14, so there is no K-Dante compatibility, of course. There is no digital input. If you want to control a KA14, of course, you can use a USB cable, as we have discussed before, or you can use the KUSB accessory, but on the KA14, as you can see, the RS485 input is not over XLR, but it's over Euroblock Phoenix connector. You see here in the bottom right corner, there is this 4-pin connector. So you will need to create a short, like adapter cable from XLR to Phoenix Euroblock connector. And this way you can enter in a KA14 using the KUSB accessory, okay? KA14 is usually meant for smaller installations. Most of the time, probably you just use the touchscreen to configure everything, and then you connect your computer to do a bit of equalization. But in case you have, several KA14 in kind of a bigger installation where you don't have KA24 or 84, this kind of trick can be very good, okay? Just remember that it's not included, so you need to do it yourself. A little cable from XLR to Euroblock, and you can see my slide or in the user guide of the KA14 how to do that cable. It's, just a very simple connection, no problems at all. And then you can join multiple amplifiers together, again, going from one Phoenix connector to the next one, etc., etc. It's just a little less practical than KA24 and 84 because you don't have the XLR input and output connectors for the serial data, right? Good. It's time to open one amplifier and make it play sound as better as possible. As I've told you, you could do a lot of things from the touchscreen directly, but of course now it's not really easy for me to show you to use a touchscreen during the training, right? It's much better if I connect my computer to an amplifier. I have a KA24 here with me, and I show you the software to set the amplifier up. So, first of all, let's download the software. Where can you find it? Of course, on our website, products. And you go into software. Here we go. K-Framework. And as you can see, you can find K-Framework 2 dedicated to KA14 and also our portable systems like KR202, 402, 802, 102, KRX, etc. Even if they are not part of this training, the software is the same. And then you have K-Framework 3, as you can see, Windows and Mac version. So please download the software that you need, and let's open the software. Let's remove this. And let me open the software and share the software screen with you. Okay. Let me bring the software to your attention. Here we go. So that's the K-Framework 3 that I'm going to show you now. And as you can see, there is on the left, there is kind of a little library of virtual devices. And if I click, I can see that right now we have KA24 and 84. You see we are missing the KA14. And then there is the concert series. So KH2, 3, 5, etc. and the monitors. When you start, what do you do? So first of all, I have connected my computer to the amplifier, in this case with a USB cable, because the amplifier is here on my desk very close. Otherwise, I could use the K-USB accessory or the K-Dante. Okay, so my computer is connected. I have switched on the amplifier and I have set an ID number. Now I have only one amplifier, so I decided to set the ID number to 1 using the touchscreen, right? So touchscreen, info section, and you set ID 1. Now all you have to do is you go into network. So network is the communication kind of page. Here we go. And you can see on the top right corner that you have RS485 or Dante. What's the difference? That if you click on Dante, you can enable the communication between the computer and the K-Dante accessories. Right now, I don't have any K-Dante accessories. And in case you have, the software is asking you, what range of ID values is set on the amplifiers that have a K-Dante accessories on them? For example, you have 3 amps with 3 K-Dante accessories, or also if you have just 1 K-Dante and then several other amplifiers connected in cascade, daisy-chained, the software wants to know which kind of ID numbers it should look for. Anyway, and then you can enable and press OK. But right now, I don't have any Kdante accessories, so I'd better disable the Kdante communication. Otherwise, the software will try to find these Kdante accessories. It's not going to find them, and it's just a waste of time searching, right? So RS-485 is instead in case you are using a USB cable or, of course, the KUSB adapter. And that's exactly my situation. So I click here. The software, as you probably know, if you want to send serial data to a device, the computer has to open a virtual port to enable the communication. So you have to open a port, which is called COM port. And on these virtual ports, the computer is going to send the data. Of course, the software needs to know which is the port that the computer is using to talk with the amplifier. So the first thing you have to do is to go here, and you will find this kind of drop-down menu. And usually, most of the time, you will find just one COM port. You select that one and you are done. In case your computer is connected also to some other devices which require a COM port, you may find here more than one COM port. Now, how do you know which one is the one used to communicate with the K-array amplifier? The best way, the most elegant way to do it will be to go into the device manager of your computer, and there is a section called COM ports, and there you can see the name of the COM port used. So for example, there will be a K-array something associated to COM port 4. You know that COM port 4 is the one. To be honest, I've never done it because 99% of the times you have only one COM port here, and the remaining 1% of the times you may have two COM ports. You just try with the first one. If it doesn't work, you go with the next one, right? So not the most elegant way, but the way I do it all the time. So in my case, I have only one COM port. So, okay. Which kind of ID numbers should my computer look for? I have only one amp with ID 1, so maybe I can just go from 1 to 2. And that's more than enough. Enabled, okay, boom. Now, I can go discovery, and the computer will start to check the network and see if it finds an amplifier in the range of IDs that I've specified. And of course, he found my KA24. Very good. And this is a real device, right? So you find it in this left kind of column because it's a real KA24 found in the network. Now you can synchronize, so you click sync, the real device into the workspace. If you do so, you will find your amplifier ready in this page. You could do also something else. You may decide to prepare your amplifier at home, so you can create a virtual amplifier at home when you are not connected to the real amp. And to do that, you use this library on the left. So I can create a virtual amplifier like 10 days before the installation. Then I go in the, you see at the bottom of the software, there is this bar. I go ID, and I set on this virtual amplifier the same ID number that I'm going to set in the real machine. So in this case is 1. I could create the preset, already add some delays and everything. If you know what, I mean, probably you don't know yet which delays you are going to need, right? But you could do a lot of things. And then when you are done, you go into network and you see that there is a virtual KA24 in the workspace. And with this arrow here, you see there is this arrow. You can decide to synchronize the virtual amplifier into the real one, meaning you want to put inside the real amplifier what you have done in the virtual amplifier. Or you can do vice versa. You can synchronize the real device with the virtual one, meaning that you want to read what is on board of the amp and send all this data inside the virtual amplifier you have done. And so you are actually erasing everything you have done. So probably it would be better to go from workspace to real, meaning I've done my work at home. Now please upload all the data inside the amp. To be honest, this is really useful, especially for concert systems, because, you know, with concerts, you may have a lot of cabinets, and maybe you want to prepare the workspace at home with all the groups. You want to create left boxes, right boxes, subwoofers, and then when you get in the venue, you have only, 1 hour to set up everything. You upload everything in the real devices. In case of the amplifiers, most of the times you wait to connect the computer to the real amp, and you just read whatever is on board. So you synchronize the real device into the workspace, okay? If this is a brand new amplifier, of course, you are not going to find anything on board, and you'll have to set the amplifier up. So now it's synchronizing. You see, it's reading all the data inside the amp. It's done. You go in setup, and here is your KA24, the real one. In case you have an old firmware version, when you synchronize the amplifier, you will get a pop-up window saying, hey, you need to update the firmware. And so you will update the firmware in order to be able to use, because this software is pretty new. So maybe if the amplifier you have is not brand new, maybe it was shipped like 2 months ago or whatever, it may have an older firmware which is not compatible with K-Framework 3. Not a problem at all, okay? Just it will ask you to update, you press update, you wait a minute, it's done. Okay, so we have our real amplifier ready to be set up. So shall we give a name to the amp? So you go name, you call it restaurant, because maybe this is the amplifier controlling the restaurant. Good. ID number, if you want to change it, you can, but why? That's not really useful right now. What is important is preset. So let's select preset. Let's click on this pen editing icon. And you see that this is a brand new amplifier, and so everything is empty. Now, what I'm going to show you now is the most important part of the training. So let's do this, and then we have a break to relax after this important part, because you cannot make a mistake here. Absolutely. A mistake here means you may damage the speakers. The speakers may not sound good. If you are going to have an issue, 99% of the times is related to what I'm going to show you now. So, on the left, you have the so-called device presets. So, the presets that you are going to save, which include, the equalization you have done and the volumes, etc. Right now, of course, it's a brand new amplifier, so I've done nothing. There is only a KA24 default preset, which is actually just an empty preset. So sometimes I load this preset if I want to clean the amplifier, right? You give the amplifier to somebody, you don't know what they have done, they gave it back to you, you load the default preset, and this it's kind of a factory reset, right? So it's deleting all equalization, all volumes are back to 0, and the amplifier outputs are going to be muted the same way as when you buy a brand new amp. What is important, in fact, is the page on the right. Why? As you can see, there are the 4 outputs, A1, A2, B1, B2, the 4 outputs. The amplifier wants to know which speakers, what model of speaker is connected to each output in order to load the proper channel preset with the proper limiters and proper factory equalization. You remember how important limiters are? You remember that you need to use K-array amplifiers to drive K-array speakers, mainly because when you load the K-array preset, you feel safe because the proper limiters are loaded. That's the moment when you do that. So, what kind of speakers have you connected to output A1? Maybe some Cobras, KK52? Okay. You go and look for a KK52. So here we go, KK52. Then, how many of them? To be clear, if you set the number of speakers, nothing is going to change. If I go 1 or if I go 2, there are no effects. So we are not adjusting the volume or changing the equalization. It's not an adaptive, no. This number here is just a reminder for you to show you how many speakers of that kind you can connect to that output. You remember the table that I showed you that it's telling you how many speakers you can put per channel? This is kind of a reminder. This quantity is telling you, hey, you have connected 6 KK52 on this channel. Probably you made a mistake, right? So anyway, let's imagine we have just one Cobra on one side, okay? Then the amplifier is reminding you the impedance settings. You have to set the Cobra at low impedance. The table is telling you that, and also the software is reminding you that. And then there is the final column, extremely important. The software, pay attention here, and write in the chat if you have a doubt here. The software wants to know which subwoofer you are using in the same room of this Cobra such a way that it can adjust the crossover point. So if you are using a KU210, for example, or several KU210 in that room, you'll have to specify that this Cobra KK52 is working together with a KU210. Okay? Now, on output 2, maybe you have another Cobra. Okay, let's do a 2.1 scenario. Cobra on the left, Cobra on the right, and subwoofer in the center. So you'll do the same. You have another Cobra. Where are you? KK52. Here we go. And you are using it together with a KU210. Okay. Good. Now, on output 3, B1, probably you have the KU210, I guess, right? How many? Maybe 1. Which impedance you have to set? Low, okay. Now, the KU210 is a subwoofer. So, the software wants to know which is the mid-high element that you are using together with this subwoofer. And of course, which is the mid-high element that we are using together with that subwoofer? The KK52. Here we go. So if on the left side you have a subwoofer, on the right side in the match you have a mid-high element. If on the left side you have a mid-high element, on the right side you have a subwoofer. You always have to match them together in order for the high pass, low pass filter, etc. to be adjusted and have a very nice matching. Now, you want to know the truth? You want to go a little more advanced than that? Well, I'll tell you the truth. The truth is that actually is always the subwoofer adapting to the mid-high element. So the most important row here is that KU210 is matched with KK52. So depending on the starting frequency emission of the KK52, which is something around 170 hertz, right, something like that, the KU210 will play up to 170 hertz, and then the Cobra will take it. So it's always the subwoofer adapting to the top. If, for example, instead of a KK52, you select KZ14 by mistake in this case, the KU210 is going to sound as high in frequency as the high pass filter on the KZ14, which is something around 500 hertz. So the KU210 in this case will play up to 500 hertz in order to match the starting point of the frequency reproduction of the lizard. Okay, that's how it works. So let's go back to KK52. And on output B1, the B2, maybe we don't have anything. It's just a spare channel. So we leave it to none and we go apply configuration. And now we can start breathing again because we know that any kind of signal we are going to send to the amplifier, the speakers are safe because we have loaded the proper limiters, the proper factory equalization, and the proper crossover points. We are good to go. Okay? If you have any questions, you have, let's say, 7 minutes to think about them, because that's going to be our break time. Okay, so let's have a coffee. Let's think again about this output configuration. That's what we call output configuration process. You can do it also from the touchscreen, actually. You can do also from the touchscreen. It's much quicker with the computer, but you can do also from the touchscreen. You click output configuration and you complete all the steps. Okay. Don't forget about the match, because that's extremely important. Otherwise, the crossover points will be not matched, and who knows what kind of sound you are going to get when the subwoofer maybe is not playing enough frequencies to match the top, and you have a hole in the middle, which is going to sound terrible, right? So 5-7 minutes break, okay, so that we relax a moment, and then we'll be back. If you have any questions, the chat is yours. Okay, I'm back. This was a little longer break, but now my voice is ready. And thanks for staying online, everybody. I know that when we enter into software is a little even harder to follow, and most of you already know very well the whole process. But I hope a refreshment is useful also for the most experienced ones. So our amplifier is safe. It's time to go to the next tab here called routing. And very easy. 4 inputs, 4 outputs. You can send any signal from any input to any output. So in our scenario, where we have a 2.1 system, I guess input 1 is maybe the left channel going to the left speaker, like the first Cobra. Input 2 is going to the second output, which was our, let's say, right Cobra. And then on the third output, B1, we have one sub, and we want to send both left and right channels to that sub, and so we'll go like this. Of course, you can create much more complex configuration than this. AES gain, it's useful, of course, only if you are using the iZebu input. You know that usually iZebu digital input is quieter compared to analog, and so this is just a gain that you can use to increase the input gain on the digital channel, on the digital channels. Then we have status, so output temperature of the amplifier's output stages, which is fine right now. Info section, here is where you can upgrade the firmware. So if there is a new firmware available, you will find it in this drop-down menu. How can you, what happens if we release a new firmware? We release a new version of the software that you find on the website with the new firmware on it. So as soon as you connect with an amplifier, you will find here that there is a new firmware available, and you can update to the new firmware. Pay attention that updating the firmware is going to erase all the settings on your amp. So do not update the firmware of an amplifier which is already working, already set up and everything, if there are no important reasons to do that, right? Because you may have to start again from scratch to reload all the settings. And then you can manage the LCD of the amplifier. So for example, you can enable mixer mode, or screen lock is probably one of the most useful here. So if you enable screen lock, it means that if somebody tries to touch the touchscreen and change something, that's not going to be possible. The screen is locked. The only way to unlock the screen again is if somebody connects a computer with this software and disable the lock. In mixer mode, the screen will still be locked. The only thing that you can do is to change the volumes. Okay, so this can be useful if you want to leave the client, for example, the possibility just to change the volumes, the gains from the touchscreen. So very easy to understand. And then we have EBS, which is available only on the Concert series, and LED, which is available only on the Concert series. So now that we have our output configuration done, that we have our routing done, the next step is to do a little bit of adjustments, right? So maybe you want to reduce a little bit the volume of the sub, Maybe you want to add a little bit of delay on the tops. Maybe you want to do some equalization. How do you do all this? You can do all this in the groups. So if you want to adjust volumes, delays, equalization, you always need to create one or more groups. How do you create a group? Of course, on the left, you can see here available groups. You can create an input group if you want to group the inputs of the amplifier, or an output group. So let me create an output group. Let me call it tops. I click plus minus to assign the channels to this group. So I called it tops, and I have the tops on output 1 and 2, right? So it's Cobra left and Cobra right. So channel 1 and channel 2. And then I may create another group, of course, which is going to be the sub. I know, the sub is, whoops, I think I clicked too many times. Let's wait a second. Let me insert. Yeah, I wanted to be too fast. Of course, even if, let me start again, sorry. Let's delete this group. Yeah, sometimes it's better to go slow and makes things right instead of trying to be fast. So tops, let's assign output channel 1 and output channel 2. And then we create another group. Even if we have only one sub, we need to create a group in order to access equalization and volumes and everything, okay? So always create groups for everything. Assign channel 3. I could also, just to make things, more complete, create another output group and call it all. Maybe because I want to do some equalization affecting everything or whatever, okay? So I will assign this group to everything. So you see, one channel can belong to multiple groups. That's not a problem. I mean, channel 4, I don't have anything. So what's the point of adding also channel 4? I mean, I could, but yeah, it's an empty channel. Okay, good. Now that I have everything, all I have to do is to go into tuning session for my adjustments, okay? So I go tuning. When I go tuning, if you click on one group on the pen icon, like tops, here we go. You can adjust the volume. So like now I'm setting, minus 10, for example. I don't know, maybe I want to reduce a little bit the volume. I can add the delay on the tops, maybe to realign with the subs. So let's add the 3 milliseconds delay, for example. I can mute, invert the polarity and everything. And I can do some equalization on the tops. Now I'm working on the tops only, right? So as you can see, there is only one filter. Why? Because first you use one filter. For example, a peaking a peaking at 2 kilohertz minus 3 dB. Now that you have used one filter, another one is ready for you to use. That's how it works. You can see the equalization shape curve clicking on this icon here in the center. And here we go. And you can add, more equalization just using here you click on a filter, and you do whatever you want, okay? Yeah, something like that, okay? Just for fun. If you keep adding filters, after a while, you don't have any more filters to use, right? I think it's a 6 available. Let's see. So let me use another filter and another filter and another filter. Yeah, you see, no more filters are popping up because on one output channels, you have 6 filters available maximum, but that's more than enough to do whatever you want, okay? Good. I'm happy with this very nice equalization of the tops, which I would be pretty curious to listen to this disaster of an equalization, okay? Let's close this. Let's go to the subs. And maybe we want to do also, you know, some adjustments here. And I can do some equalization on the subs as well. So maybe I want to reduce on my, even if I use such, you know, I'm just having fun, okay, using filters. Yeah, okay, I'm cleaning everything a little too much. Now, pay attention to something. Maybe, you know, I want also to revert the polarity on the subs and whatever. If now I go back, I go into the all outputs, right? Let's go on the all. So the group which is managing all the outputs, there are no filters available. I cannot do any equalization. Why is that? That's because I have consumed all the available filters in the tops group. The maximum amount of filters available does not depend on the group. The maximum amount of filters available depends on the channel. So one channel can have maximum 6 filters. If you use all those filters in the tops group, in the all group, which is using the same channels, you don't have any more filters available. If I go in the tops and I remove one filter, so for example, I go 0 dB here, and so I'm not actually using this filter, I find one filter available in all, okay? Because the maximum amount of number is 6, so play with them in the groups that you have available. Okay. Of course, in the all group, I may decide for some reasons to, you know, reduce everything by 3 dB, -3. Now, if I go into gain here on the bottom, you see that probably you don't see it very well because it's pretty small now for you online, but you have -12 dB on the tops, -3 dB on everything. So on the output 1 and 2, you have -11 and -3, which equals -14, right? So of course the parameters in the groups are summing together. And the same is with the delays. If you have a 3 milliseconds delay on the tops and you add a 1 millisecond delay on everything, then you have 4 milliseconds on the tops and only 1 milliseconds on the sub. Okay, that's how groups are supposed to work, right? So polarity, as you remember, I reversed the polarity of the subs. You can do also each individual channel actually, like, you know, you invert the polarity of this, or you can really do everything. The same with mute. You can mute the channels one by one, or you can mute the groups. There is the last kind of window, which is input delay. Input delay it's something which is not part of a group, but as you can see, if you go input delay, you can click on the amp and manually set the input delays on channel 3 and 4. Why? Because input delay is available only on input 3 and 4. Input delays is not available on input 1 and 2. Okay? So input delay is available on input 3 and 4, and that's because we think that usually you use input 1 and 2 for the main system, and then you may use input 3 and 4 to create a delay line, like, you know, when you need a delay line. And these delays are really long, like 100 meters and something. Yeah, it's more than 100 meters, okay? No, this is milliseconds, sorry. So it's like, 300 milliseconds or something. Yeah, you can set very long kind of delays for delay lines, okay? That's it. That's it. You can create, of course, also input groups. If you go into setup, you can create an input group. For example, you can call it in 1 and 2. And you can assign it to input 1 and 2. And this way you can control the volumes, for example, of your inputs instead of the outputs, right? So pretty straightforward, I'd say. And of course, if you go into tuning, and you go into, where are me? Yeah, sorry, input 1 and 2. In this case, you see in input, you have less features. You cannot reverse the polarity of the inputs, of course, I'd say. So you have only level, kind of an input gain, and I think 3 or 4 filters. Let me see, on the KA24 and 84. Oops. Here we go. Yeah, you have 3 additional filters in input. So, I mean, you can do a lot of things. Now that everything is set up perfectly, you have done your equalization, adjusted your delays, the installation is sounding amazing. What do? You want to save what you have done. That's extremely important, right? So let's go back into setup. Let's select our amplifier. And let's get into preset. Select the amp. And now I'm going to save here on the left a device preset on board, okay? With all the equalization I've done, all the volumes. I want to save it here forever. So I go save, and I call it restaurant amp, or whatever. Confirm. Maybe now you could do another equalization, changing something, and save another preset, calling it like brighter preset or whatever. And then from the touchscreen, you can always recall these presets whenever you want. After I save a preset, I want also to export the preset on my computer. Because in case, it's not going to happen, but the amplifier fails or it gets stolen or whatever, you'd better have your your amp saved, your preset saved on your computer locally, right? Okay, I'm not going to do it now. Also, you can save. Let's go back to the main window. You can click save here on top. And in this case, you are saving this entire workspace. So you go save. Okay. And then, of course, it opens, you save. In this case, you are saving all that you see on the screen. Maybe you don't have only one amplifier. Maybe now I have only one connected, but I may have several amplifiers in my rack, right? Maybe there is the one controlling the bar and everything. If you save the workspace from here, you're going to save the settings of everything and all the groups and everything. This restaurant amplifier is ID1. Maybe the bar amplifier is going to be ID2. And if one day your amplifiers have some problem or whatever, you can always reload all this page, go into tuning, into network, and synchronize all your virtual amplifiers, so your virtual workspace with the real amp, and this way you resend all the data on all the amps at once. Okay, so I always save everything. I save the preset on board of the amp. I export on my computer all the presets of all the amps, and I also save the workspace in its entire configuration. Adrian is asking in the chat if I can recall preset from touchscreen if I selected the lock screen. No. If the screen is locked, you don't access anything. You touch and the touch screen the screen doesn't respond. Oh, I forgot to tell you something. The LCD screen is just an interface. If for any reason the LCD is broken, so is showing like, some wrong pixels or whatever, doesn't necessarily mean that the amplifier is not working. I mean, if the LCD is broken because the amplifier is broken, okay. But if only the LCD is broken for some reasons, the amplifier keeps working, no problem. In the meantime, you maybe order another one, you change it or whatever, it has to be done. But the touchscreen is only an interface, okay? Just, sometimes I forget to tell you things and they come to my mind later on. I think I've told you maybe not everything about the K-Framework 3, but I'm pretty sure I've covered the entire path from the beginning to the end. If you have any questions about K-Framework 3, ask now or later, or send me an email, however you prefer. Because now I'd like to just quickly show you K-Framework 2, because that's the software that you need in case you have a KA14 or our self-powered subwoofers, right? KMT12, KMT18, KMT21, and KMT218, so our portable systems. Those are not yet on K-Framework 3, so you'll have to use K-Framework 2. But I'm not going to teach you, all the steps on K-Framework 2 because they are very similar to the K-Framework 3. We just an older, let's say, visual interface, user interface. So let me close K-Framework 3 and let me open K-Framework 2. Just very quickly, because of course you connect the computer in the same way, you do everything in the same way. It's just that I want to show you where you find, you see it looks different, of course. Available only for Windows, okay? So you connect your computer to the amplifier, and then what do you do? You go into settings. You go into settings, and you have again RS485 and Dante. So let's go RS485 let's select the COM port that we are using. Okay. Let's select, in this case, it's a little bit the software is not asking the range of ID numbers, it's asking the maximum. So it's always looking from 0 to the max ID. So let's go, I don't know, from 0 to 2, apply. Okay. And then you go discovery. Okay, it's the exact same way. And look what's up. He found an amplifier. Why? He found my KA24 because K-Framework 2 is also compatible with KA24 and 84. Even if now, most of the time, we are going to use K-Framework 3, if you like K-Framework 2, you can keep using K-Framework 2, actually. But the firmware version is not compatible, you see, of course, because now this amplifier has the firmware for K-Framework 3, which is not compatible with K-Framework 2. So in case I want to use the KA24 with K-Framework 2, I'll have to downgrade the firmware. So when you go add all, you click on this arrow, you see there are no volumes, there is no nothing on this wheel, sorry. The only page which is open is configuration. You go here and you update the firmware. Okay, which is something I'm not going to do now because I don't want to downgrade my KA24. So I remove my KA24, and on the right, I can insert a virtual KA14. You have to drag and drop, okay? You click, drag and drop into the workspace. You click on the wheel, and here you will recognize the same functions that I have already taught you. Okay, so output configuration is the most important. And it's the same, like speaker model, match with. Now it's called pair with, but it's the same concept. And then you have input and output volumes. So with K-Framework 2, creating groups is much more complex. And so you have directly, output. You go into output, you have the levels, that's it. Okay, so. And you go into input, you have also a little bit of equalization. So in KA14, you don't have equalization in output, you have only in input, etc. But these are all things very easy. As soon as you open the software, you immediately understand what to do. So there is really no much difference with, it's so simple. And I've already teach you the most, then you have routing, of course, and output configuration, which is the most important page, and then you can save your preset on board. It's the same story. So I don't want to spend your important time showing you again the same kind of, concept. The main differences are only that in KA14, in the routing page, you have two matrices, two patches. One is the input patch, where you can assign the physical inputs, so XLR or RCA, to the DSP inputs. So channel 1 and channel 2 are the only two inputs available in the DSP of a KA14. So if you want to send it from, you have your mixer connected to XLR 1 and 2, you'll have to send XLR 1 and 2 to channel 1 and channel 2. That's what you are going to do most of the time. If you are using RCA, you are going to send the RCA. As I told you, KA14 is two inputs only. The DSP is two inputs only. You have also an RCA output, if you want to record something, but, most of the time you will do this. So you send your XLR inputs into the channel 1 and channel 2 logical DSP inputs, And then you have 2 inputs, 4 outputs. And so maybe you want to send channel 1 to output 1, channel 2 to output 2, and maybe you have a sub in output 3, and you send channel 1 and 2 to output 3, okay? So that's it. When you are done, of course, you can save the preset on board, going save, and that's it. So no much to say here. And this, I think, ends the explanation of the configuration of our rack amplifiers, KA14, KA24, and KA84. If I don't see any questions in the chat in the next few seconds, I will move to a totally different amplifier with a totally different software interface, a totally different kind of concept, because that's the KA02, and you all know that KA02 is the new generation of K-array amplifiers. In the future, all our amps will change, getting more similar to the KA02, so having Ethernet kind of communication and Wi-Fi and all the things that I'm going to show you now for the KA02. I will drink a little bit of water, and just in case you have any questions on the rack amps, feel free to ask, because now I'm going to switch to the KA02. Okay, little bit of water, and we can have a look at the KA02. First of all, the KA02 amplifier, as you all know, is the brain, the main component of all our Azimuth systems. Azimuth systems are kind of packages, right, that you can buy, including speakers, subwoofers, and the amp. If you order one of these Azimuth kits, the amplifier is already pre-configured, meaning that the presets are already loaded, the outputs are already open, the inputs are already open. You connect the amplifier to the speakers, you connect your mixer to the amp, you start playing music, done. If instead you buy a KA02 as a standalone amplifier, so you order just the KA02 amplifier, of course we don't know which speakers you are going to use with it. So the amplifier is completely kind of reset. The outputs are muted the same way as KA14, 24, and 84. You have no sound coming out. You can connect whatever to the inputs. You have no sound until, guess what? You complete the output configuration process. So in this case, it's the same concept of KA14, 24, 84, but you don't have to do that in case you buy a kit, an Azimuth kit. Okay, that being said, how can we control the amplifier functions? Well, the basic functions can actually be controlled with a wireless remote control, which is included in the Azimuth systems. So if you order an Azimuth system, you will find this remote in the package. If you don't buy an Azimuth system and you buy a KA02 amplifier standalone, in that case, the wireless remote is not included, but it's available as an accessory on our website. And from here, what do you have to do? You open the wireless remote control box, and inside the box, you will find a little dongle, a little USB dongle. You have to plug that USB dongle, which is a receiver, inside one of the USB ports of the amp. It's like, when you have a wireless mouse from your computer, right? You put that little receiver inside one of the USB ports on your computer. It's the same. Then you have to switch on the wireless remote. There is a little on-off switch on the right. And you also have to make sure that it's fully charged, the remote. If not, you can just use a standard, like cell phone power supply charger, not power supply, charger, to charge this. Okay, very easy. Main functions that you can see, like volume up, down, and play, pause the music that's going on in the player, as I'll show you. And then you have the Bluetooth button. You have to click on that Bluetooth button if you want the amplifier to enter in Bluetooth pairing mode for 3 minutes. So if you want to connect your phone to the amp via Bluetooth, click on that button, and you will find, in the next 3 minutes, you will find the amplifier as a Bluetooth receiver in your phone or your computer, whatever you're using to stream music over Bluetooth. Since the last update of the Azimuth of the K802 firmware, actually, when you switch on the amplifier, so when you give power to the amplifier enters in Bluetooth pairing mode automatically for 3 minutes. But you have to have the latest firmware. I'll show you how to update the firmware of your amps, because if you don't have the latest, the only way to enable the Bluetooth is to click on that button, or if you don't have a remote, you'll have to connect your phone or computer via Wi-Fi to the amp, enter inside the configuration app, and enable the Bluetooth pairing from there, as I'll show you how to do it. But from now on, actually, when you switch on the amplifier, you give power to the amplifier, it will go in Bluetooth pairing mode automatically for 3 minutes. If you wait more than 3 minutes, then you have to click the Bluetooth button. We have also a wired remote instead of a wireless. So this is available as an accessory, actually, in case you don't like to have a wireless remote, but you prefer a wired remote. So with a cable, a physical cable going to the amp, there is in fact a wired remote inlet in the amp. This could be good, for example, for hotel rooms. If you install these systems in hotel rooms, and most of the time, people, unfortunately, they steal wireless remotes. You can decide to buy this one, and this can be mounted on a wall, for example. It looks like a lizard, actually, very small. And then, but you have to physically wire this remote to the amplifier. And pretty interesting, on this remote, there is also an infrared receiver on board. So in case some of you are using like Creston or Control4 systems and you want to send data to the amplifier over infrared, actually using this remote, you can do this because this remote is going to capture the infrared data and send them to the amplifier. Pretty advanced kind of thing, but you know, we can dig more into this in case some of you need to go infrared. Good. Now, the remote is nice, it's easy, but of course you can do only the basic functions like, you know, volume up, volume down, change track, play, pause. Okay. If you want to control the amplifier more seriously, of course you need an app, you need an application, a software, let's say. Well, the software to control the amplifier is a very simple web page. It's just a web page. This web page is inside the amplifier itself. So in the firmware, let's say, of the amp, there is this web page, which is the configuration software, let's say. Since it's a web page, you can open this web page with any kind of device you have in mind. Your phone, your tablet, your computer running Windows, your computer running Mac, whatever. It's just a web page, right? You open a browser, you are in. You can also use, of course, external control system like Creston, Control4, Extron, name it. In this case, the communication between your devices, your control systems, your phone, your computer, whatever, and the amp is based on IP communication. So this is really Ethernet. It's really a local network or whatever you want to create is really communication over IP. So it's not RS485 serial. This is IP-based communication. And the protocol that we use to send data to the amp is HTTP REST. Again, we have available the API commands that you can use to access the amplifier functions with external control systems, like, again, a Creston, for example. Remember that the communication is HTTP REST protocol over IP, and so it's not RS485, okay? Okay. It's time to open this web page and explore all the functions available on the amplifier. So what do you have to do? Of course, your computer or your phone or your Creston, whatever, must be connected with the amplifier. Connected with the amplifier means that it must be in the same local network of the amplifier. The best way to do it is you connect the amplifier to a switch, to a router that you have in your venue, and then you connect your phone or tablet or computer to the Wi-Fi of your venue, of your home, of your restaurant or whatever. And of course, you will find, as I'll show you how, the amplifier, because it's in the same network. So you are connecting the K802 amplifier to your network with an Ethernet cable. And then if you have Wi-Fi, and I'm sure you have in the venue, you connect your computer or phone to the same Wi-Fi and you are done. Actually, if, for example, you don't have a local network in that place. Maybe you are on a cruise ship, or maybe you don't have access. I mean, for any reason. The K802 has a Wi-Fi antenna on board. So when you switch on the amplifier starts generating its own Wi-Fi. And so you can connect your phone or computer directly to the Wi-Fi generated by the K802. Very cool. It's perfect for a quick setup of the amp. But think about the stability of this connection. I mean, you are taking advantage of a small antenna inside the amp. Don't expect this connection to stay stable forever and in any place of your home, etc., right? This is okay for a quick setup. And also, of course, you don't have internet access if you are using directly the Wi-Fi generated by the amp. And internet access could be very useful to use some features like web radio streaming or Spotify. So my recommendation is wherever you can, whenever you can, hardwire the amp to your local network. If you cannot do it, use its own Wi-Fi to set up the amp, taking advantage of the onboard Wi-Fi. Somebody's asking if we can change the IP address of the K802. Yes, I'll show you soon how to do it. You can set a static IP address on the K802 and set it the one you want. I'll show you very soon. Now, if you use the built-in Wi-Fi, of course, you need to know the Wi-Fi name and the Wi-Fi password, right? And they are written in my slide and in the user guide, of course. So the Wi-Fi name is written in a label in the back of the amp. Okay, so look at the back of the amp, at the bottom of the amp, and you will find there the name of the Wi-Fi generated by the amp and the password. The default password is always 1234567 8, and then of course you can change it in the app. That's it. Okay, so use any kind of device you want: phone, tablet, computer, Mac, Windows, name it, and make sure that your device is in the same network as the amplifier. Okay. Then, from mobile or tablet, there is a very simple and nice app that you can download from the App Store or the Google Play Store, which is called Azimuth Discovery. So please download it right now during the training. It's just a free app, of course. It's called Azimuth Discovery. You will find it. You download it on your phone. When you open this app, the app will automatically scan the network, trying to find all the K802 amplifiers that you have in that network. Maybe you have 10 of them, maybe, because maybe you have a big restaurant and you have 10 rooms, and in each room you have one of these amps, and they are all in the same network because they are all connected to the same switch and to the same router. Then with this app, you can scan the network, and the app will tell you all the amplifiers that were found. At that point, you click on one amplifier, and the app will automatically open your default browser and open the web page to access that amp. Okay, so it's very easy. I don't think I will be able to show it to you in the camera, but you download it, and I can try just for fun to see if, let me see. Oh, I have also to connect to the same Wi-Fi of my amplifier. Yeah, anyway, it found my amp. I click on that amp. I have only one here at home, and I'm inside the app. Okay, now I'm inside the Azimuth control interface, which is the web page to set up the amplifier. And now I can adjust the volume and do everything. But if you're using a computer, there is no Azimuth discovery software. What do you have to do is that you have to open your default browser and you have to write the name of the azimuth. So in this case, it's azimuth-K115G0336L. So azimuth minus. How do I know that? It's written in the bottom of the amp. So you look at the label in the bottom of the amp, which is telling you the string that you have to type in a browser in order to access the amp directly. So you see, I write that and I'm inside the web page. If you're using a Mac, no problem. Open your browser, which is like Safari, or if you have Firefox, Chrome, whatever. Type the name and go inside. Other option is, of course, to type directly the IP address of that unit. The Azimuth Discovery app on my phone is telling me which is the IP address of the Azimuth of the K802 amp that I have actually. So I know that it's 192.168.1.116. And so that's another way to access the web page, of course. If you set a static IP on the amp, as I'll show you, in that case, of course, that's the only way, I'll say. So it's you type the IP address that you have decided for that unit. Now that we are inside the amp, I can show you all the features available, and then we will finish our training for today, because I know that software is pretty heavy, so we will try to finish a little bit earlier. Give me 5 minutes break for my voice to relax a minute, and then the last 30 minutes together, I will show you all you need to know about the configuration of a K802 amplifier. 5 minutes, I'll be back to show you very quickly, it's pretty easy, the amplifier control app, and then I will be available for your questions, and I will drop the link to the quiz. See you in 5. Okay. Back, I see a question in the chat. What is the IP address for the K802? By default, the K802 is in DHCP mode. So it's your router which is going to assign an IP address to the amplifier as soon as you connect it to your local network where you have a router. In case instead you connect your computer or phone, whatever, directly to the Wi-Fi generated by the amplifier, the default IP address was written in my slides before, but I don't think it's really useful to know because you are connecting one-to-one. So in case you want, you can set a static IP address. So since I've seen all questions related to IP address, let me show you, first of all, the network and Bluetooth page, okay, here on the left. Here you can manage the Bluetooth devices connected. For example, you can forget, remove the Bluetooth devices, and you can enable the pairing. As you remember, you can do it from here or from the remote control. Wi-Fi settings. Here you can enable or disable the built-in Wi-Fi. You see right now I have disabled it. It's not blue, it's white. It means that I have disabled it. Why? Because I don't need it. I have connected my amplifier to my local network and I'm connecting my computer to the Wi-Fi of my home. So I don't need the Wi-Fi of the amplifier itself to be on. So I have disabled it. And that's always very good to do. If you are not using the built-in Wi-Fi, disable it. Also because that Wi-Fi is an access point to your network. So if you accidentally forget to adjust the Wi-Fi password that you can do here, so you can change the password of your Wi-Fi. If you don't change the password, remember that this could be also a little risky because any K-array user coming close to your venue may connect to your local network, entering inside the Wi-Fi of the amp if you didn't change the password, okay? So always better to disable it. In case you disable the Wi-Fi, when you switch on the amp the next day, the Wi-Fi is not there, of course. This could be a problem in case for any reason now your local network is down or you disconnected the amp from your local network and you need to connect to the amp with its own Wi-Fi. There is a little trick to enable the Wi-Fi again without being connected to the amp. And that trick is, to press the Wi-Fi reset button in the back of the amp, okay? There is a little button that you keep pushed for 10 seconds, and this resets the network setting of the amp. So the Wi-Fi is back on with the default password 1234567 and also in case you set a static IP on the amp, clicking this button will reset the amp to DHCP mode. Okay, so if I go back in the app, you see that Ethernet settings mode is DHCP. You can edit and select a static IP if you want, and you type the IP address and the net mask, etc., as you know. In case you are not able to, find this amp anymore, you don't remember the static IP anymore for any reason, pressing that button in the back will reset the network settings, okay? And here you have some more info, more advanced info. Okay, so that's how the IP communication and setting works. So let's go back to the main page, pretty easy. You can enable and disable the available audio sources, so analog connection, optical, you remember there is an optical input in the amp. Bluetooth right now is gray because I'm not connected in Bluetooth with the amp. And player is gray because I'm not using the internal player right now. What is the internal player? The internal player is what you see here in the bottom. If you plug a USB pen drive into the amplifier with some music on it, you will see all the songs that you have on that pen drive here, and you can start, of course, playing the tracks, and you can, shuffle and move to the next one, repeat everything, the same kind of functions that you have in a playlist. And you can also enable auto start at boot, meaning that in the morning, as soon as you switch on the amplifier will start automatically streaming the music from the pen drive, and you can have any kind of standard music files on the pen drive, like MP3, WAV, FLAC. I don't know about AAC. I don't remember. I can try to put one of those files, but I mean, all the most common formats are available. For sure, WAV, MP3, but FLAC, I'm pretty sure. I should just double check, and you can send me an email. I can double check all the available formats by its, all the most common ones. So just writing my email in the chat. How big can be the USB drive? Wow, that's another good question. How max it can read in the USB pen drive? Mine is 8 gigabyte, I would say, and I have like at least 20, 30 songs on it, and there is no problem. I've never reached anything close to a max, so I'm pretty sure sooner or later there will be one, but never reached that. So I think you can keep a very big playlist on board and have no problems. And then you have also auto start on connect, which means that every time you put a USB drive in one of the USB ports, the amplifier starts streaming the music from that USB drive, pen drive, okay? Other option in the internal player, pretty cool, is web radios. You can, if your amplifier is hardwired to your local network, and your local network has access to the internet, you can stream web radios directly from the internet. This is very good, for example, for retail stores, because you know that many times all the stores of the same brand around the world stream the same music from a web radio streaming server. All you have to do is to write the URL of the web radio server. Sometimes people write something like www.radio100.com. No, that's the website of the radio. That's not the web radio server streaming address. You have to find it. So there are some services online where you can find web radio URL servers. For example, where is it? So in my slides that I'm going to give you, there are a couple of examples. You see, sometimes these servers have very weird names. It's not like your favorite radio.com, okay? So you put the URL there, like, this one. Let me see if it works. Because, sometimes these servers, they change or whatever. Save. Okay, and I can start streaming my web radio server, and I can put auto start again. This way, the streaming will start automatically when I switch on the amplifier. Okay. Other option is Spotify. Probably you all know the Spotify Connect features. If your amplifier is connected to your local network is connected to the internet, you can use your phone, you can open the Spotify app. Your phone must be connected, of course, to the same network. You open the Spotify app, you start playing music, and you can go on available devices, something like that. You click, and if Spotify finds in the network a device like the K802, which is Spotify enabled, the amplifier will start getting from the internet the Spotify music that you are selecting on your phone. So in the end, you're using your phone as a remote controller for Spotify. How many stations can be added in the web radio? These are all very good questions, actually, that pretty funny I've never been asked before. So I'm kind of sorry that I'm not able to give you this maximum number of things. I've added many and I've never had be an issue. Again, drop me an email and I will ask the software guys to tell me which are the official limits, if any, because I've never get even closer to having too many of music on my pen drive or saved web radios. So again, probably there is a limit, but it's I don't know that. Okay, so feel free to ask me the email, and I will let you my colleagues answer, of course. Good. Next, audio setup. Very easy to understand. You have a graphic equalizer that you can use, to clean a little bit whatever you want to do on it's an equalizer, okay? And of course, you can save a preset on board and then recall it. Pretty obvious. What is important here is that you have input and, even more important, output levels. So, if your subwoofer is a little too loud, you can reduce it. Now, you remember, in order to drive a subwoofer with the K802, you need two channels bridged together in PBTL mode to get 100 watt at 2 ohms. So you see output 1 and output 2 in my amplifier are linked together. They are bridged together, linked, because that's the output where I've connected my subwoofer. And then output 3 and 4 instead are independent, and they are actually the top right and top left channels. So if I want to reduce 3 dB the sub, here is where you do it. Input levels are used mainly to adjust the sensitivity, let's say, of each input, because if you often switch from analog to optical, for example, you may have a level disalignment. And so maybe if the analog is much louder than the optical, you can adjust a bit the analog inputs, for example. Good. So input and output levels, pretty easy. Local streaming, one of the most important and appreciated pages on the K802 amp. Imagine that you have several K802 amplifiers distributed in the network. So in your restaurant, you have one K802 amplifier taking care of the main bar, another one taking care of the restaurant area at level 1, and the other one, the restaurant area at level 2. If all the amps are in the same network, you will see all of them here. Okay, so now I have only one amp, but if you have 3 amps, you will see 3 amps. You can set one amp and only one as a master, and some or all of the other amplifiers as slaves. If you do so, you can stream your music on the master amplifier using analog, optical, Bluetooth, web radio, pen drive, whatever you want to use. That music will be forwarded to all the other amps set as slaves, which will start playing the same exact music of the master, perfectly time synchronized. Pay attention here. All the amplifiers in all the restaurant, in all the rooms, will play the same music in the same exact moment with no latency. Meaning that if you have 2 amplifiers powering the same area, maybe because it's such a big area that you need 2 amps to drive all the speakers in the same area, you don't have any delay between the speakers. But this comes at a price. The price is that as soon as you enable one unit as master or as a slave, a latency of 2 seconds is added in input, let's say. Let me explain. You start streaming your Bluetooth music on the master. This music is captured by the master, and it waits 2 seconds to start reproducing that music. Because in those 2 seconds, it has enough time to forward the music to all the other amps, and then after 2 seconds, it goes like, let's go all together, and they all play together. Is this a problem? Usually not, because if you are reproducing recorded music, what's the problem if the music starts 2 seconds later? You will never realize that. The problem is if you are using one of these amps to power the speakers of a TV, for example. You have a TV in your living room, and you have some lizards and K-array speakers, and you connect the output audio of the TV to one amp. Never set that amp as a master or a slave, because otherwise you will have 2 seconds delay between the images, the video, and the audio. It's going to be terrible. So if you are experiencing this latency, it's because that amp is either a master or a slave. Go here and remove it from master or slave, because you cannot use it for that application. Other situation, maybe if you are using a microphone, like in a conference room. Again, that amplifier cannot be master or slave, because otherwise you have a 2 seconds delay, kind of, right? So remember this, it's important. Okay, info section, pretty easy. You can change the name of your amplifier. So maybe you can call one amp restaurant area, one amp bar area, etc. And going back to local streaming, of course, you can control the volume of each you can control the volume of each room separately. Okay, so they all play the same music, but you adjust the volume on each room, of course. And then you have the user guide here and the serial number, but nothing really important. The most important thing here is to change the name of your amplifier to give it a meaningful name. And then we conclude with the advanced window, and we are at the end. If I'm reading the questions. If amplifier 2 is a slave, can I still play music directly from my gadgets? I mean, if the amp is a slave and you connect a source to that amp, that music is not going to play. I mean, if an amp is a slave, is a slave. So it's reproducing what is doing whatever the master is doing. If you want that amp to be independent, you just have to go in the local streaming and remove the slave switch from that amp. And so it goes back to be an independent amp. You can stream it from there. And no, to play file music from a NAS or a shared network folder, that's not possible. I'm just thinking, because actually the only way for music to be sent is to create a web radio kind of stream, which is possible. There are also software that you can use to create your own kind of web radio server. And then in the Azimuth, you will type the address of that web radio kind of server, but you have to enable a web radio server to stream your own music in that way. And anyway, I'm sorry, I don't know exactly how to pronounce your name, Louis. sorry. I see very good and advanced questions from you. So drop me an email to me or to Mark and with all your questions, because they are all very, very good ones. So good that I'm not able to answer some of them. Sorry. But I have some colleagues which are in charge of software, and I can put you in touch with them and you'll get all your question answered, because sometimes I miss some things because I'm not working in the software development, so I'm more kind of an advanced user. And so sometimes it's I better put you in touch with my colleagues. Good. So advanced, what can we do here? Of course, standby, reboot, pretty obvious. Demo, there is a demo track on board, like in the keyboards, when you press demo and the keyboard start playing a factory kind of music. If you click demo, a demo song will start at maximum volume. It's a song that we decided to add, which sounds really well on the Azimuth systems. And so, it's just for demo purposes. Factory reset, of course, it's going to erase all kind of equalization and everything you have done. Firmware update. Attention here. I see that you can see here the current version and the latest version. I have the latest version, so I'm good to go. If your amplifier is connected to the internet and there is a new firmware available for the amp from K-Array, the download button will be blue, okay, telling you that there is a new firmware that you can download, and then the install button will be blue and you can install it. Very easy. In case you want to update the firmware and you don't have an internet connection, for example, again, you are in the middle of the sea on a cruise ship, you are installing K-Array systems there, and you don't have access to internet for any reason, you can install the firmware via USB. In order to do so, you have to go on our website. Of course, do it at home when you are still online, right? Otherwise, so I always have the firmware of the latest firmware of the K802 with me in case I don't have an internet connection. So you go into the K802 amp. Here we go. Then you go in the download area. K802 firmware. You click here, you download the firmware, and there is a README file that you have to read carefully, okay? Because as it is explained, you have to create a folder in one USB pen drive called update. You put the firmware inside, and then when you put the pen drive inside the K802 amplifier, the amplifier will realize that there is a install via USB firmware available, and this button will be blue, okay? So it's possible to update the firmware of a K802 even without an internet connection. Audio firmware, forget about it. It's something advanced that we use only in case you have a big issue on the amp and we do a team viewer and maybe we adjust the audio firmware. It's where you can reset the DSP, but it's something that usually it's reserved to KRA service centers. Let me go for a minute into output configuration, but you know this page very well now. So, speaker and match, right? So if you have a subwoofer connected to one output, you need to specify which is the match of that subwoofer, so which is the mid-high element playing with that sub to adjust the crossover and vice versa. In my system, you see I have a Truffle KTR25 connected on output 1 and 2, linked together in PBTL mode. That's the place where you can decide to parallel outputs together in PBTL mode. So channel 1 and channel 2 are PBTL mode bridged, and they are powerful now to drive the subwoofer. KZ14 Music, it's a new preset that we have done for the KZ14 that we like very much. And so usually that's the preset we recommend for the KZ14. We have also the ordinary KZ14, which is more kind of the older preset. So the main difference is that the KZ14 Music has a little difference frequency range, but I mean, now I don't want to go too much in depth on this. 99% of the times the KZ14 Music, it's it's what we recommend, okay? It's a new preset, and it's even nicer than the KZ14 preset, let's say so. If you buy an Azimuth system, an Azimuth package, of course, this page is already done for you. Okay, so you don't have to worry. If you buy a standalone K802 amplifier instead, that's the first page you have to fill in order for the amplifier to start playing music. So maybe, maybe I don't have a Truffle 25, but I have a Truffle 24 with some KZ1. And so I have some KZ1 with the Truffle KTR24. So I just changed. Make sure to press apply, and then you are done. You have also some kind of configuration, factory configuration, which are the Azimuth systems, right? So they are already done. So like 2V25 load, and you will see the amplifier changing to KTR26 KV25, you see? But here at home, right now, I have the Camute QL14. So let me reload it, because otherwise I could damage my speakers, right? Of course, you know that. Apply. It was not necessary to go apply again, but better being safe than sorry. Routing, very easy. You have 2 inputs, 4 outputs. So pretty easy to understand the routing kind of concept. I'm going to, the Bluetooth dongle, it's something you don't need anymore, except if you have an older version of the amp. This Bluetooth dongle, was a way to randomize the Bluetooth dongle, which the MAC address of the Bluetooth dongle, because when you buy one K802 amplifier, in one of the USB ports in the back, there is a Bluetooth dongle, and that's the receiver, to be able to stream over Bluetooth. And sometimes it may happen that 2 amplifiers have Bluetooth dongles with the same MAC address. And then if you have issues with Bluetooth communication, randomizing that Bluetooth dongle MAC address is a solution to re-go independent, but that's something advanced and more a thing of the past. This Spotify, it's you know that when you use Spotify Connect, you enable Spotify Connect on your phone. When you change the volume on your phone, you change actually the volume on the K802 amplifier, because Spotify kind of takes control of the volume of the amp. And that's a request from the Spotify manufacturers. If you don't like that, you can enable the volume lock, let's say, such a way that Spotify is independent. The volume of Spotify is independent from the volume of the amplifier, the slice, which is this one, okay? Because if now I connect my Spotify Connect, and if I change the volume on the Spotify app, I will see this moving. Okay. Let's finish. So automatic standby, pretty obvious. So if you enable automatically wake up from standby, means that as soon as you send some music on one input, the amplifier wakes up even if it was in standby, and automatically enters standby is the vice versa, that if you don't have any music going on for like few minutes, the amplifier goes in standby mode. Pretty cool, actually. So let's enable it. Hardware control is the last thing that it's here to show you. In the amplifier K802, in the back, let me show you the back of the amp, which is here. There is a GPI input. Actually, is 4 GPI inputs. And as you can see, you can connect up to 4 standard on-off switches. So, a switch that when you click is creating a short circuit. And this GPI react to short circuit. So as soon as you click one button, the amplifier will get the information that you have clicked. And in this page, you can assign a function to each of the 4 GPI inputs. For example, you want that every time you click on the on-off switch connected to the GPI 1, you increase the volume, or maybe And when you click on the GPI 2, you decrease the volume. Then when you click on GPI 3, when you click on the switch 3, you want to set the volume to minus 6 dB. Oh, I have to enable. Okay, and this way you can use some physical switches to control some basic functions of the amp, which are more or less the same you have on the wireless remote, right? And this should cover everything, actually. On our website, let me show you. In the Kei Academy page, we recently uploaded a complete video tutorial of the Azimuth systems. So if you go video, there are a lot of recorded webinars, like about rail, subwoofers, etc. But there is the Azimuth tutorial. If you click on the Azimuth tutorial, it's 15 chapters, so it's really a complete tutorial, you see, and you can, there are also the advanced features explained, you know, like GPI, I've explained you now, how to update the firmware, and this could be goes to share also with, you know, some clients or some users of yours. And at the end, in chapter 13, I'm also showing you, because yes, I'm sorry, it's always me talking. I'm showing you an app that we recently added to the Apple Store. So it's available only for iPhone or iPad, which I'm not going to explain in detail now because I invite you to watch the video. But it's a simple app that turns your phone into a remote with some basic features. You know, if you have a client and you don't want to give access to the full configuration app of the Azimuth, because I mean they may change some important parameters you don't want them to do. Of course, they can use the wireless remote, but they can also turn their phone into a remote. And as you can see, there are 4 buttons, A, B, C, D, and you can assign any kind of function you want to those 4 buttons. Like when they press A, they set the amplifier as a slave. I mean, very advanced things you can do. Of course, you need to insert the API commands, which are available on the K802 user guides, or upon request, we can give you the full list of API. But have a look at the video tutorial on how that works. So it's also an excuse, you know, for me to show you that we have the full Azimuth tutorial published online. Good. I think that I've told you, I hope, a lot of information about the setting of these amps. If you have any questions, drop them in the chat or send me an email. And while you think, if you have additional questions, of course, I want to share with you the link, to the quiz. Let me drop it in the chat. The link to the quiz. Of course, save it on your computer, please. If you lose it, send us an email to me, to Mark, to whatever, and we can always resend you the link to the quiz. It's just a Google form with, I think, like 20 questions about the topics we have discussed. Okay, so take your time in the next days, like tomorrow, whenever you want, to take the quiz if you want. Some questions may sound a little complex, like what kind of impedance settings are available on a Python KP52? Maybe sometimes I don't even remember that. No problem, you can always check the slides of my presentation that you can download from the link that I'm going to give you in a second. I gave it to you also last week. Quiz slides. Here we go. So read again the slides. On our website, in the user guides, there are the answers to most questions. If you have a doubt, drop us an email like, hey, Daniele, I'm not sure I understood why I may have latency on a K802 amplifier. We are here to explain that. I mean, the more we interact, the better. So, the quiz is just an excuse to rethink a bit about all the topics we have discussing during this pretty long training. So I really don't know how to thank you for the time you have spent online. I know that, listening to the same guy talking for hours about software and everything, it's pretty hard. But I hope that you will benefit of this information where you are in front of a K-array device and you feel confident that you know how to make the installation sound to perfection, right? So that was my goal. If you have any questions, Mark and I are at your disposal. I know you may be a little tired now, but whenever you want, your questions are welcome. Mark and I and all our colleagues from all around the world are always at your disposal. As Mark is reminding me, it's time for aperitif in most countries in Asia. Here in Italy is almost lunch time, actually. So I'll have to cook some pasta because in 1 hour, more or less, I'm going to have lunch. And probably you are going to have dinner if you are from the Asia Pacific area. Thank you, Mark, for sharing your email. Let me share again mine as well. Yeah, Jack, aperitif time in the Philippines, eh? Yeah, it's really nice to see, our colleagues from our partners from all around the world being always involved in the trainings, because you see sometimes I don't remember something myself. And so it's always good to always retrain and be ready to support our final users, integrators, and everything as much as we can. And yeah, I miss you guys. So in the chat, I recognized many of you. And I will really love to have an aperitif with you all. I hope I will be able to travel again soon. We are all waiting for that, for this whole, world pandemic to be over, and having a drink with Mark, with Jack, with Teddy, with Vincent, with Sean, with Jason. I've ever recognized many of you, and I would love to meet all of you, which I had not yet the opportunity to meet in person. And if you, as soon as you are able to travel to Italy, please visit us at K-array headquarters in Florence. because some good food is waiting for you and also some good speakers to listen to. Come to Vietnam. I'd love to, Andrian. I'd love to. I've been in Vietnam, where we have really great partners. So I came to visit our Vietnamese partners, and I had such a good time in Vietnam, in the Philippines, in Indonesia, and that was my last trip together with Mark. And we did some trainings also in person, which is so much more fun than doing it online. But you know, it's we have to wait. The quiz you can answer whenever you want. You can answer now, you can answer tomorrow, you can answer next week. It's a Google form. As soon as I see that people answered and with a passing grade, I will prepare the certificate, and after a few days, it will be sent to you by my colleague, Mark. So take your time whenever you want. You can do it now, you can do it tomorrow. And of course, you can have a drink or having dinner while you take the quiz. Let me share the link to the quiz one final time before ending the session. Here we go. Just a second, guys. Quiz. And you know, it's really useful for me also to see if I passed the message the right way, because you know, if you all make a mistake in a couple of questions, it's not your fault, it's mine, right? So next time, maybe I will change the way I present that subject. So, guys, thank you very much. I say see you soon and bye from Italy. Have a good evening.
Ciao from Malaysia.
Yeah.
Thank you all again. We had a nice big crowd today, and even more than last week. So it's really nice. So thanks for all of you for being with us and learning about our unique technology. And we will continue this. I think the next ones will be in the summer, right, Daniele?
Yeah. It's not scheduled yet. So we'll have to discuss about that. These are pretty long trainings. So we are going, yes, probably to do another in summer or early September. We'll see. This session is recorded. So if any of you wants to watch again the session, drop an email to Mark or I. The recording will be available since I think tomorrow. It takes more or less 1 day to process the video. So we will let you know when another training is available. But now I think you will really have all the information to install KRA systems to perfection. Mark, thank you very much.
As always.
And always nice to hear you, and knowing that we are always doing these events together, even if we cannot do them from the same location right now, but I hope we will be able to do that soon. So, ciao everyone from Italy. Have a good evening, a good day, and let's keep in touch. Bye.
Ciao, ciao.
Ciao, ciao.
Thank you all for being with us.